Welcome everyone. Today we are exploring the incredible story of Don Quixote. After reading too many knightly tales, a Spanish nobleman decides to become a hero. He renames himself Don Quixote, and with his squire Sancho Panza sets out on a series of adventures. The pair famously fights windmills they mistake for giants and gets into all sorts of comical situations. It's a wonderful story about a man who creates his own reality and tries to live by a code of honor. So let's start our journey. In a small village in Spain, there lived a man named Alonso Quijano. He was about 50 years old and lived a quiet life. He loved reading books about knights and their adventures. Alonso read so many books about knights that he began to neglect his real life. He forgot to eat and sleep properly. The stories filled his mind day and night. One day, Alonso decided he wanted to become a knight himself. He would travel the world and help people in trouble. He chose a new name for himself, Don Quixote de la Mancha. Don Quixote found some old armor that belonged to his great-grandfather. The armor was very old and had some broken pieces. He spent several days cleaning and fixing it. He also needed a horse for his adventures. He had an old, thin horse that he called Rocinante. The horse was not strong, but Don Quixote thought it was magnificent, like the horses in his books. Every knight needed a lady to love and protect. Don Quixote chose a farm girl from a nearby village. He called her Dulcinea Caldoboso, though her real name was Aldonso Lorenzo. Early one morning, Don Quixote put on his armor and climbed onto Rocinante. He rode out of his village without telling anyone. He felt excited about his first day as a knight. As he rode through the countryside, he saw an inn in the distance. He decided this must be a castle with turrets and flags. In his mind, the innkeeper became a lord, and the servants became beautiful ladies. Don Quixote arrived at the inn and asked the innkeeper to make him a knight. The innkeeper thought Don Quixote was crazy, but he agreed to help. That night, Don Quixote watched over his armor in the inn's courtyard. The innkeeper performed a ceremony to make Don Quixote a knight. He used a book of accounts instead of a prayer book. Two women from the inn helped with the ceremony. During the night, some travelers tried to move Don Quixote's armor. He attacked them with his lance, thinking they were villains trying to steal from him. The innkeeper quickly finished the ceremony. The next morning, Don Quixote left the inn as a real knight. He rode home feeling very proud. He wanted to get a squire to help him on his adventures. Don Quixote asked his neighbor Sancho Panza to be his squire. Sancho was a simpler farmer with a wife and children. Don Quixote promised him great rewards. Sancho was skeptical at first, but Don Quixote told him exciting stories about treasure and islands. Finally, Sancho agreed to come. He would ride his donkey while Don Quixote rode his horse. 3 days later, the two men left the village early in the morning. Don Quixote wore his armor and carried his lance. Sancho brought food and other supplies for their journey. As they traveled across the plains, Don Quixote saw 30 windmills in the distance. He told Sancho they were giants with long arms. He planned to fight them and take their treasure. Sancho tried to explain that they were just windmills, but Don Quixote wouldn't listen. He said a magician had changed the giants into windmills to trick him. This made him even more determined to fight. Don Quixote rode toward the windmills with his lance ready. The wind turned the windmill's arms and one arm hit him hard. Both Don Quixote and Rocinante fell to the ground. Sancho ran to help his master. Don Quixote was hurt, but not seriously. He said the magician Froston had turned the giants into windmills at the last moment. Sancho helped Don Quixote get back on his horse. Don Quixote's lance was broken, but he said this didn't matter. A true knight could overcome any difficulty with courage and determination. They continued their journey, looking for more adventures. Don Quixote was sure that better opportunities to prove to his bravery would come soon. The next day, they saw two monks riding toward them on the road. Behind them came a coach with a lady inside. Don Quixote decided the monks had kidnapped the lady. He rode towards the monks, shouting that they must free the prisoner immediately. The monks were confused and scared. They tried to explain that the lady was traveling freely. Don Quixote attacked one of the monks and knocked him off his horse. The other monk ran away quickly. Sancho began looking through the monks' bags for treasure. The lady in the coach was actually traveling to meet her husband. She was not a prisoner at all. Her servants were angry about the attack on the monks. One of the servants challenged Don Quixote to a fight. They battled with swords while Sancho watched nervously. The servant was young and strong, but Don Quixote was determined to win. The fight was interrupted when more travelers arrived. Both men stopped fighting, and Don Quixote declared himself the winner. He told the lady she must go to Toboso and tell Dulcinea about his brave deeds. That evening, Don Quixote and Sancho made a camp in a forest. They heard strange noises in the darkness. Don Quixote said they must investigate these mysterious sounds. Sancho was frightened and tried to stop his master. The noises were loud and rhythmic, like giant hammers hitting metal. Don Quixote was sure it was a great adventure waiting for them. Don Quixote insisted on going toward the sounds alone. Sancho tied Rocinante's legs together so the horse couldn't move. They had to wait until morning to discover what was making the noise. When the sun rose, they walked toward the sounds. They discovered the noise came from fulling mills beside a river. The mills used water power to clean cloth. Sancho laughed at the simple explanation, but Don Quixote was angry. He felt embarrassed that such ordinary machines had seemed like a great adventure. He told Sancho never to laugh at him again. They continued their journey, but Don Quixote was in a bad mood. He needed to find a real adventure to prove he was a true knight. Later that day, they met a barber riding down the road. The barber wore a brass basin on his head to protect himself from the rain. When Don Quixote saw the shining basin, he became very excited. He told Sancho that the basin was actually Mambrino's golden helmet. This was a legendary magical helmet that he had read about in his books. He decided he must win it in battle. Don Quixote attacked the surprised barber, who dropped his basin and ran away. Don Quixote picked up the basin and put it on his head, declaring himself the owner of Mambrino's helmet. On the road, they met a group of prisoners being taken to work on the king's ships. The prisoners were chained together and guarded by soldiers. Don Quixote asked about their crimes. Each prisoner told a different story about why he was being punished. Don Quixote decided that all the men were being treated unfairly. He believed they should be free to choose their own destiny. Don Quixote attacked the guards and freed all the prisoners. The grateful prisoners thanked him, but when he asked them to visit Dulcinea, they refused and threw stones at him instead. Don Quixote and Sancho escaped to Sierra Moreno Mountains. Don Quixote decided to stay in the mountains for a while. He wanted to do penance like the knights in his books. He wrote a letter to Dulcinea and gave it to Sancho. Sancho was supposed to deliver the letter and then return with her reply. Don Quixote would wait in the mountains and think about his lady. Sancho left on his donkey, but he was worried about his master. Don Quixote seemed to be getting stranger every day. Sancho decided to go home instead of looking for Dulcinea. Meanwhile, in Don Quixote's village, his friends were worried about him. The priest and the barber decided to go and bring him home. They disguised themselves to trick him. The priest dressed as a damsel in distress, and the barber became her servant. They planned to ask Don Quixote for help, then lead him back to the village when he agreed to assist them. They met Sancho on the road and learned where Don Quixote was hiding. Sancho agreed to help them, though he felt bad. about tricking his master. The priest and barber found Don Quixote in the mountains. He looked wild and thin from not eating properly. When he saw the disguised priest, he immediately offered to help the lady in trouble. The priest told a story about a princess who needed assistance with a problem in her kingdom. Don Quixote eagerly agreed to help her, just as his friends had planned. They convinced Don Quixote to come with them. Sancho was happy to see his master again, and they all started the journey back to the village together. As they traveled home, they stopped at the same inn, where Don Quixote had become a knight. The innkeeper recognized them and told everyone about Don Quixote's strange behavior. Other guests at the inn were amused by Don Quixote's stories about his adventures. Some people laughed at him, while others felt sorry for the confused old man. That night, Don Quixote's niece and housekeeper arrived with a cart to take him home. They were very worried about his health and wanted him to rest. Don Quixote's friends decided to put him in a wooden cage for the journey home. They told him that a magician had enchanted him and he could not leave the cage until the spell was broken. Don Quixote believed this story because it sounded like something from his books. He sat quietly in the cage, though he was frustrated about being unable to continue his adventures. Sancho knew the truth about the cage, but he didn't tell his master. He was glad they were going home, where Don Quixote would be safe. They arrived at Don Quixote's village on a Sunday when everyone was in the town square. All the villagers came to see Don Quixote in his cage. His niece and housekeeper cried when they saw him. The priest and barber took Don Quixote to his house and put him to bed. His family was relieved to have him home safely. They hoped he would forget about being a knight. For several weeks, Don Quixote stayed quietly at home. His friends and family took care of him. They thought he was getting better and forgetting his strange ideas. Don Quixote rested at home for many months. Slowly, he began to remember who he really was. He realized that his adventures had been the product of his imagination. On his deathbed, Alonso Quijano, for that was his real name again, asked his friends to forgive him. He said he had been foolish to believe he was a knight. He wanted to die as a Christian gentleman. His friends were sad to see him die, but they were happy that he had found peace at last. Sancho cried for his master, remembering both the good times and the strange adventures they had shared together.